Yes, Spurs fans, back with your weekly panel show. We have Sam and then hopefully Billy joining us later. Billy's making a Van de Ven style run to try to get back to join us later on. But we do have Sam nice and early here with us. So hopefully you guys do enjoy another panel show. We have plenty to talk about. Where is Vinay Venkatesham? Where is Johan Lange? We need to file a missing report because so far Spurs have only spent £3 million total in terms of actual net spending this January window when they said supposedly that they're supposed to be a £150 million war chest that they're going to dip into. It looks like they haven't dipped too much into, especially considering that they sold Brennan Johnson for a decent fee as well. We'll be chatting about Thomas Frank's future, about whether he's still going to be in the job after this Frankfurt game or even after the Man City game this weekend. Talk about the seriousness of the relegation battle. Plenty of stuff to get through, plenty of stuff to talk about. We'll try our best to get through all these questions. Lots of different stuff to discuss. Yeah, Dave?
Just quickly, also some breaking news coming from Thomas Frank's press conference. Pedro Porro's picked up a hamstring injury and is out for the next 4 weeks. And Van de Ven is out tomorrow, expected to be back for Man City's game.
In the case of Pedro Porro, I mean, that's probably had to happen at some point because I think we need to probably start drug testing him because the guy was going through so many games without any injury. So hopefully Pedro Porro comes back healthy. As much as he's had some stinkers, let's be honest, we have relied on him just being healthy for such a long period. And I didn't know if he could put in another 5,000, 4,000 minute season. But everybody, as you're coming in here, do smash the like button, please. And of course, at any stage, if you want to, give us your questions, or if you want to do what Logan THFC has done, who is the first one in here. He's saying, good evening, fellas. Pick up Jack and Dave and the chat. He sent in a popcorn emoji. Thank you very much, Logan. If you want to support the channel like he has done here, we would really appreciate it. And of course, for all the channel members, we try to, at the end of the show, reserve time to answer any of your guys' questions. So if you want to become a member, want to ask us extra questions, feel free to do so. It is at the top of the chat. Going to bring some people in here, and then we'll get the show underway. Darren Kilbane, board Lange owners don't seem to know what they are doing there. There's a protest within the stadium on Sunday. Hopefully fans get their point across to the owners and the fans and had enough of them on the board. I mean, that's why we have Billy on today, too, because then he can give us more insight on that for change for Tottenham. Darren Kilbane. We have Looper Cal in the business. Good to see you as well. Hopefully everything's all good with you. Logan THFC is followed by saying, just watching Sky Sports News, and apparently Odebear and Muani involved in a minor car accident with the tire blowing. No one injured, but both still traveling to Frankfurt. I was joking to Dave that with Kolo Muani trying to push for a move, maybe he's trying to injure himself to try to get out of the club at the minute. But it seems like nothing can go well for Spurs, even just a daily commute over to the Spurs training ground. They can't even get done right. Fantasy McShane, really appreciate your support as a member. Tartan Spurs, our man up in Scotland. Looks like that Robertson deal is slowing down, Tartan. If you can put in a good word for us, we would appreciate it. Tyler's in the house as well. Good to see you, Big T, the one and only Davey Hall. Big up everyone. Club's just useless. If they really want to back Frank, if they try to get in cover in all positions, we were lacking. They've not, so you can tell that they're not going to give him much time. I think when he's talking about the signing, Sean Maddox, boo Sam, I blame him for the injury crisis 100%. I mean, I don't know who else to blame other than Sam, to be honest. Sean. Wayne Bonner saying, good evening, folks. Hope you're all well. Looks like Tottenham's transfer business has disappeared quicker than the Gooners at work. Good one, Wayne Bonner. Good one. AK Shags, good to see you. Terrible news about Porro. I definitely agree. Ricky, the one and only, good to see you in the house as well. Appreciate your support. And then we also have Dibbity in here as well. Like I said, everybody, as you're piling in, smash the like button for us and get your comments in, and we'll get the show underway.
I was just saying to Dibley, what did Sam do there?
Everyone's just coming after Sam today. Well, Sam, I'm not sure if we've gotten to speak to you about it. We spoke to people yesterday on the fan show, and I think we'll just ask you first, and that Billy comes in time, we'll ask him. But Spurs sit just 8 points off of the relegation zone with a brutal February ahead. Manchester City, United, Newcastle, and Arsenal are all on the calendar. Are we at the point where we have to seriously consider us being in relegation battle?
I think we are. I think last season we had the luxury, let's say, of the fact that there genuinely was just three absolutely not Premier League teams in the division. And there was no chance of them picking up points really anywhere, except for when they came to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. But this season, everything's changed so quickly. I often use Villa as the example of they went from basically not scoring in 5 to nicking 1 against 10 men Sunderland, and suddenly they're third, pushing Arsenal for the title, apparently. and then you look at West Ham, they're doing protests, they're doing whatever, and suddenly they've got 3 results in a row. Forest are picking up points. It's we're coming to a point where it's actually getting dangerous, where although I still have that maybe sort of elite mentality, thinking that we're not going to go down, we're too big to go down. If we end up coming out of this period with 0 points, and other teams pick up a couple wins or a win and a draw or something, they're really, really close behind us. I think West Ham are 8 points now behind us, and they're the closest team or something like that. So, if we, as I said, we pick up nothing, they pick up a win, 2 wins. Suddenly, it's literally within, breathing distance, and we're really looking like we could go down. Especially if in the next 5 days or whatever it is, we don't 4 days, we don't end up signing any players that actually help us in the first team. Then what is the reason why we can't get dragged into it? And with the mentality of everything around the club, we probably go down if we get sucked into it. There's going to be sound bites. People are saying like, oh, this guy's saying that Spurs are going to get relegated. I'm not saying that. I worry that if we do get sucked into the fight, we question the players' mentality every week. Do they have the mentality for a dogfight to keep themselves in the division? That is the question.
I think we've also sleptwalked into it, to be honest, Sam, whereas the other 2 teams, Forest and West Ham, who we'll be battling with for this relegation battle, really. West Ham have been pretty well aware that they've had a dire season. They've had protests from almost game 1. They've had managerial turnover. It's been pretty toxic there for a while now. So you'd imagine that these players have been more or less preparing for this type of battle, really. And I think with their recent wins against us and with Sunderland, they're now gathering momentum, which really worries me, whereas we're headed the opposite direction. And then in the case of Forest, kind of the same story where for the whole season, it's kind of been a bit doom and gloom for them. Sean Dyche has, to the best of his ability for the most part, tried to rescue them away from relegation after Ange Postecoglou's work. But you would say that these 2 teams have almost mentally prepared themselves for a real dogfight for the rest of the season, whereas we've almost slipped and slipped and slipped to the point that we've almost sleptwalked, I think, ourselves into this. And it's at a certain point, when do we wake up, either with transfers from the board or from the players just pulling their own finger out of their ass, really?
I think when you look at the situation right now, right, where you look at the club's top scoring charts, it's Romero, Mickey van de Ven, and then Richarlison, who's out injured. So like we don't have the ability to be able to score goals up one end, to be able to go and win games, to win enough points to be able to survive that sort of battle, which is a huge concern within itself. And you also look at the amount of injuries we're carrying, and now Pedro Porro's the latest one, to key players. They're slowly going by the wayside, and you're starting to rely on a lot of the younger members on the periphery of squads and seasons gone by. When we had to do that last season under Ange Postecoglou, we showed we couldn't sustain what we were doing at the start of the season and stuff like that. It got drastically worse. So that's also a huge worry. Then when you look at the director of football, clearly doesn't have the pull to be able to bring in players between now and the end of the window to be able to try and salvage this situation is a huge concern. When you look at what's going on with Vinay on the board, they're afraid to make a decision right now, which is also going to keep lowering you if they persist with Thomas Frank. Thomas Frank has lost all confidence in his own ability. He doesn't know which way is right anymore. He's just stabbing in the dark right now to try and get results at Tottenham Hotspur. That's a huge concern. And then when you look at some of these players, do any of them have the love for the club that Sonny, Kane, players like that had in years gone by? No.
True.
So they don't have any loyalties to really stick around and perform, because a lot of them know they'll just end up getting out of, like Romero signed a new 5-year contract. You go down to the Championship, Spurs will have to reduce the wage bill, which means he'll just bounce his way out of this club. So there's not really going to be too much fight within a lot of the players right now. When you look at them offering fans out for fight, blaming us for a negative home atmospheres and stuff like that, they ain't going to fight for us. So that's a massive concern. And then when you look at the fixture list, we've got massive games. Man City, we always usually beat, but you can't take that for granted right now. You've got Chelsea, who historically we lose to and have a bad record against. Newcastle have been very tough for us in years gone by and almost sacked a lot of our managers in previous times. And then you look at Arsenal. if we play like we did at the Emirates, we have absolutely no hope of getting a result. You know, one of our Vicario's biggest weaknesses is set pieces. So all they've got to do is use that route. And eventually, if they hammer the door enough, they'll eventually get one. So that's another massive concern. And then when you look at what the other teams' fixtures are around us, right? West Ham. So they got Chelsea this weekend, which you hope Chelsea does a favour. But they've also got Burnley and Bournemouth to finish out the month. Two very winnable games, or games they can pick up a couple of points, which just drag us closer if we don't win. Then you go on to Bournemouth, who's just ahead of us, not too far ahead of us. They've got Wolves, Everton, West Ham, Sunderland to sort of finish out the month. So you'd bank that they'll get enough points to pull themselves away from that. Then you go into Nottingham Forest, Palace, Leeds United, Wolves, you know, and then Liverpool and Brighton to finish out the month. But you'd like to think they'll pick up enough points to be able to pull us further into the scrap. Then you go on to Leeds United. They have more of a difficult month, maybe arguably than what we do. Arsenal, Forest, Chelsea, Aston Villa, Man City to see out the end of the month. So that would be one of our saving graces. But Leeds are showing the ability to be able to pick up points at the minute. So that's not a given. And then you look at Crystal Palace. You know, they've got Nottingham Forest, Brighton, Burnley, Wolves. You know, they are only saving graces. They've also got European fixtures thrown in the middle of that. So you're maybe hoping they prioritize that, and that might help us. But, like, we are badly in the middle of a relegation scrap right now, unless we can do what no one is predicting us to do, which is pull some results out of the bag over this following month. So actually, come the start of March, you know, you could be well and truly deep down, mud deep in that scrap. And it's a huge concern. You know, I've heard the old expression, you're too big to go down. But when you got people in and around the club that don't know how to make elite level, you know, cutthroat decisions in a cutthroat industry at elite level sports, no wonder, like, you know, they're a massive part to blame why we're in the situation we are. Does anyone actually back them to make the decisions and the right decisions to be able to get us out of it? I don't either. So, right now, we should be very, very concerned as Tottenham fans. The only hope is once we get out of February, you're hoping we can scrap enough points out of the fixtures that are left to just keep us afloat.
Well, let's just take this as a follow-up then, just in terms of the too big to go down. Colin, who we speak to hopefully this Thursday, they got Colin. Also, great profile pic, by the way. You know, very, very nice. And
very professional.
Yeah, very professional. He's come in here, Sam, and I think he's more or less making that mathematical point. You know, you only need so many points every season to avoid relegation. He's saying, no way we go down. We'd only need 3 more wins. Do you agree with him on that? It feels like
we've only had 3 wins in our last 15 games.
That, and also, like, maybe this season's a bit special, Sam, with how competitive it has been. Like, teams are all taking points off of each other.
Yeah, and, like, look, I think everyone's seen the fact that we've had quite a favorable run of games over January, and we've picked up minimal points. You know, you look at our home record. It's what Frank's home record is like 18.2% or something.
Yeah.
You know, we won, what was it, 6 games or something, all of 2025 at home. You know, these stats, they seem impossible, you know, but they happened and we've all lived it. So I can't get my head away from the fact that there is a possibility that we don't pick up points. You know, I go into most games and regardless of how shit we are, I still feel like, okay, we're going to get a result today. Not all games, but a lot of games. Yeah. And I'm sure that a lot of Spurs fans are similar in that regard. Maybe it's the sort of the blind passion of a fan that can't, when it comes down to it, when push comes to shove, they can't actually want the worst for their club. And so they can't see a loss unless it's, you know, maybe you're playing against like a Liverpool or something at Anfield. I could have used another example, but I won't dignify them. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know if he's saying that because of the gap that we've got right now, that we would only need 3 more wins to guarantee that the teams below us couldn't catch us. And if that's the case, then obviously I feel more comfortable with that because come on, surely we got to pick up 3 wins towards the end of the season. And that's not including draws as well, right?
Well, to Colin's point and the point you're trying to make, Sam, is once we get out of February, we've got Fulham to open up March, away from home. Maybe we can scrap something there. Then we've got Palace, and then you've got Sunderland, Nottingham Forest, Wolves, and Leeds. and Everton amongst the likes of Chelsea, Aston Villa, Liverpool, and Brighton. So there are some very winnable fixtures within there for Tottenham, where you could say we could maybe get the 3 wins we need. But if you take an absolute hammering in this next run of fixtures, you're automatically going into that then on the back foot, lack of confidence, lack of belief. You're in a complete different mindset and you're almost sort of resigned to it. And then a lot of the media and stuff will sort of pile on and put the focus on, which amps up the pressure, which leads to more people making mistakes under that pressure. We've seen that time and time again with these players. And that's then when you end up banging trouble. And that's where you find them games sort of difficult. And when you can't beat the likes of Burnley and some of the easier fixtures that you talked about, it doesn't give me hope that we rock up to them games with belief that we're going in them to win them. And also with the manager we've got, if he doesn't go after them teams and start playing on the front foot, we have absolutely no hope. If he keeps sitting off them teams and allowing them to get comfortable in the games, that's why they're picking up results off us. So I do get Colin's point, we are hoping that we can pick up 3 or 4 wins out of some of them fixtures towards the end of the campaign. But I do think if you take a tanking next month, it becomes even more difficult.
Just want to greet in some other members who are also offering their opinions. Harmless Potato, evening all. Big up Jack, Dave, and Sam. Appreciate you, Harmless. Wayne Bonner saying we're absolutely in a relegation dogfight. It slowly sucked us in with the piss poor style of football, and we've been playing. Jacob Anderson, good to see you, Jacob. He's saying bottom line is where we are is because the board only bought players that they thought could make a profit on in a few years. They didn't buy proven players and actual real quality. I think everyone would agree with you there, Jacob. And then Skunkwork saying winnable games like West Ham and Burnley there, Dave, in terms of the fixture list that you just said. Even Dave or Sam brought up that point too, right? These games that we just had, if we had won any of these last 5-6 games, we would definitely be clear of the relegation fight.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be having this conversation. But the fact that we drop points to such easy opposition has absolutely hurt us, and hopefully we don't pay the price for it.
But don't you think, Jack, that just to that last point, it would just be so Tottenham to pick up points in this run, having just dropped points to all the crap teams. Well, I'll take that back. They're not crap teams. To
unpredictable
all the
FC.
worst teams. Exactly.
Yeah.
Where I worry, and I know it's a different manager, but it is a lot of the squad is more or less still the same, bar the new signings. But if you remember back in Andrew's first season, we went in, I think, was it back end of February, heading into March, where we played like Arsenal, Newcastle, Man United, Chelsea, Liverpool, big games after big game after big game, in a similar crisis where confidence was low, a lot of injuries and stuff like that. We absolutely tanked in all them games, one game after another, after another, after another. And that's why I would say to people, it's all well and good having optimism. I'm with you guys. I'm like you, Sam. I turn up to every game going, today's the day we turn a corner. It gives us an opportunity to turn the corner. But you can't ignore signs of how this squad has handled this sort of situation previously.
And then DJ AK saying, in my opinion, we are banging trouble right now. We're not scoring enough, and the players have down tools. I think there's a bit of a split in the camp in terms of whether the players have given up or not. DJ AK, I think Colin has made the point that they wouldn't have tried to come back against Burnley if they didn't care anymore. They would have thrown Thomas Frank under the bus. Logan THFC sent in another super sticker, and it's a medal and it's a star. Thank you very much, Logan. Been very consistently generous with us, by the way. Really do appreciate you, man. But Sam, I think we'll move on from the relegation conversation unless you had anything else to add to it, because it's probably something we'll unfortunately continue to have for the next few weeks or so, unless, like you say, we were to pull off some magical results. This is in terms of transfers now. Juventus fully believe that it is the will of Randall Kolo Muani to return to the club, being Juventus, and that he can force the hand of Tottenham a bit to try and unlock that deal. How concerning is that narrative from a Spurs perspective for you, Sam, that Kolo Muani is pushing for a move? And do you even trust Spurs to replace him if they were to let him go?
Right. So I've actually been thinking about this today, and get your tinfoil hats on, because I actually think that this is agent talk. Not that they're looking for, not that Kolo Muani is looking to leave, but I genuinely think that a couple games ago, when the ball was played over the top and it was not 100% going to be kept in, but you'd think 95% chance Kolo Muani is going to keep this in if he chases it. And he just stopped. And Jed Spence, who had been on for like 80 minutes at that point, ran from basically left back and kept the ball on the pitch. And I think that for me personally, and I've seen quite a few other fans on Twitter saying the same thing, that is absolutely ludicrous that like a sub who's coming on can put in that little effort to chase down a perfectly decent ball when you're chasing a goal to either win or draw the game in a difficult season. That's unacceptable from a sub. And I genuinely think that I think the club are fed up with his attitude. And I think that they may have said to him basically like, or that maybe it's been alluded that the fact that Dane Scarlett came on the other day over him, I think more emphasizes my point. That they don't want him to play anymore because of that lack of commitment. Frank's whole thing, and people have used it a lot this season, saying we're not going to sign him because Frank's got a no dickhead policy. Clearly, Kolo Muani's a bit of a dickhead. Whether or not he's a lovely guy off the pitch or not, that's irrelevant to what I'm saying. But if you're not willing to work for the team that you're in, that gave you the chance to go there because Juventus couldn't afford the deal that you wanted, they've given you your lifeline. They've given you your chance. You've repaid them back with 0 goals and 0 assists in 900 Premier League minutes. And you can't even chase down a fucking ball that's like maybe 5 yards over here. And you're supposed to be this speed demon, who's hungry for goals. I'm sorry, like, this is a rant, but it really, really pissed me off. And especially, obviously, because the result ended up being a draw, and you're just thinking, what happens if he chases that ball down? He's completely free in behind, and he's just decided, oh yeah, you know what, whatever. And then, as I said, Jed Spence, who's been doing probably some of the most running on the pitch, chases it down, having started further back and later than Muani did. So yeah, ran over. But I think the club want him gone, and I think that the agents are. This is like to save face, they don't want it getting out that that Spurs have basically said like he can go, if he wants to go, he can go. We don't really care.
Just as a follow-up on Kolo Muani, though, and this is not a defense of his attitude or anything like that, but do you think he might be showing this lack of effort that you're describing because the style of play, the football has been so damn awful under Thomas Frank, and also the results have been so awful under Thomas Frank, that he knows he is a lone player, so he's not married to the club. He's not going to be here after this season. So if anything, he's just kind of going through the motions because of that. Like, he doesn't have any desire really to, sort of put his foot down like maybe other players are.
I get that. And maybe
so if we were playing well, maybe we would see the benefits of him, is maybe my point.
Yeah, I get that. And maybe there probably is some truth in that as well. But then, like, Muani consistently has had chances created for him across all competitions that he's played. Yeah, it took him a while to get consistent minutes, but there was a period where he was getting himself into positions to score goals and he was being found, but he wasn't doing it. But Spurs fans, and myself included, were saying, look, he's probably the best attacking player we've got right now. He's actually doing the runs that we've never seen any of our strikers ever make, because Kane wasn't that kind of guy anyway. And it's just been a long time since we've seen players make that run. But so we're making excuses saying he's not quite sharp yet. He's been injured. He's coming back in. The goals will come, but they haven't come. And I think that it's just as much on him and all the other players that we're in this position because they can't put the ball in the back of the net and they can't consistently pass 5 yards. So I do agree with you that that it is feeding into it, but then the players' performance and their own behaviors are also feeding into everything else. So it's just a vicious cycle that doesn't really have a start or an end right now.
Yeah, no, I understand you on that. I mean, Dave, even though Kolo Muani wants out, we do technically still need him as a forward option. If we did get rid of Kolo, do you trust Spurs to replace him?
In this window? No, not at all. Look, we were in a similar position last window and we brought in Matisse Tel, who at the time just wasn't ready for what we needed. And And, given that we already needed a striker and another winger in here this January, regardless whether Kolo Muani was going to kick up a fuss or not, and they still haven't got it done, and we're sitting here, the 27th of January, gives me absolutely no hope that the remaining days of this window, they're going to get in that forward player. If I'm a forward player right now and Tottenham are looking to bring me in, why would I come in and play underneath Thomas Frank when you've seen top European players go in there and replicate a third of the numbers, if not less, than what they're used to at every other club they've been at? And when you look how basic Tottenham's attacking play is, he's not a guy that you feel like is going to enhance your career. You're going to kick on underneath him, especially as a forward player. So that alone, worries me that we're not really going to get in this forward player between now and the end of the window. That they're probably looking at someone like Jed Spence to be moved up into one of the wide positions to maybe continue on. Now, when it comes to Kolo Muani himself, just quickly, I know Frank has a zero dickhead policy, but he broke that when he brought Basuma back into the fold. So he can't now double down and try and use that, towards Muani to try and discipline him. When he also let Jed Spence and Mickey van de Ven away with walking off against Chelsea and ignoring them and not double down and holding them accountable and dropping them for a game. There's no way he can follow through with other players around now. And that's something I tried to highlight when he brought Basuma back into the fold. And when it comes to Kolo Muani, look, to be honest with you, it's clear he's not enjoying himself at time. It's clear he's not loving life. And I know we can sit here and say we've created a load of chances for Kolo Muani. In general, with a lot of the games he's been here, there was one night in Europe he should have had a hat-trick and probably should have had one or two in various other games. But outside of that, we have not created him anywhere near enough chances outside of that. And I think he has lost a bit of motivation for the game at Tottenham and what he's being asked to do and stuff, which is a huge concern. And I know the general narrative will be, if he doesn't want to be here, let him go. However, I think Frank needs to have a real realization that if he can get this guy moving and he can get this guy contributing, he will change the narrative around Thomas Frank come the end of the season, because he'll be able to fire you in enough goals to be able to start winning games and stuff like that. So he could directly be linked, maybe saving Thomas Frank at Tottenham Hotspur. But also with the amount of injuries we're carrying across the front line and the lack of bodies coming in, it's even more so now where Thomas Frank has to show how good of a manager he is or how good of a man manager he is, and call Muani in and have clear the air talks and look to get the best out of him moving forward. Because right now, we need him. If you let him go, there is nobody else coming in to be able to relieve this situation. So this will be a true test of Thomas Frank's management now. If he ends up binning off Kolo Muani, he's screwing himself over. If this was Jose Mourinho, and he's done it with other players at other clubs, he would pull them in and say, look, you need me and I need you to the end of the season. Let's make it work. Then come the end of the season, we'll sort out, we can go in different directions or whatever. Does Thomas Frank have that about him? I'm not quite so sure.
Test of his player personality, his player relationship skills, Sam, to try to get Kolo Muani back on board, because I'm not sure if I trust Spurs to replace this forward option in, 3-4 days left of the window?
Yeah, I mean, we've been linked to that Samu Agahawa guy basically for like 2 months now or whatever. So I wouldn't be surprised to see on deadline day we bid like 50 million for him or whatever, 60 million. Just a last ditch attempt so that they can
probably
say
not
they
end
tried.
up getting him.
I don't know anything about him, so I all I know is the links and that he's like 6'4".
Yeah.
Look, Dave said about the Basuma thing, and I will say I was ahead of the curve when I asked that when Bentancur got injured. But I think that he basically had no choice, which is also, I guess, kind of a similar thing with this Kolo Muani thing. Is like if the club can't get anyone in, then he has no choice but to play Kolo Muani if needs be. And at the moment, needs be with Basuma. And to be fair to Basuma, again, I need to see more than a few games, but I've been quite impressed with him. He's not been amazing, but he's probably been our most consistent player through those minutes that he's had. And I've been pleasantly surprised that he's come back in seemingly ready to go rather than just, sitting there on the pitch, just making up the numbers while we wait for players to come back from injury. And I don't know. I don't really know enough about Frank's like personal stuff from before. But I mean, I guess if you look at the Ivan Toney situation,
Mhm.
He had. Sorry, I thought you guys were frozen. You were so still, and my Wi-Fi's so shit.
No, I'm listening.
Yeah, no, yeah, we're listening intently.
We've been practicing.
Yeah,
Trying to trick you.
Yeah. Well, obviously, with the Ivan Toney stuff, he had, what was it, 3 incidents or something, 2 incidents where Ivan Toney was caught saying like "fuck Brentford," and then he had the Gary Neville interview or whatever the interview was, where he basically said like "I'm bigger than Brentford." So Frank did have those kind of ego things to navigate. And I guess when Tony came back in, he wasn't great in the second season after he came back. His numbers weren't amazing, but other players had kind of taken over from him by that point, I guess.
Mhm.
But he did come back in after the ban and everything. That he did score them some important goals. So I don't know. He was willing to bring him back in. So I feel like he would be willing to work even after Ivan Toney embarrassed the club and him. I think he'd be willing to try and get Kolo Muani motivated if that is the issue.
No, I can see that argument that he can say that he doesn't tolerate any dickheads, but then at some point, maybe he then has to go back on his own rules to try to, for his own sake, let's be honest, for his own job, to try to save himself. He might have to bring some of these players back in, knowing that they do offer probably more quality than what you might get with other guys.
Well, look at Jed with Ange as well, right? I don't know. There's narratives out there that Ange was playing the long game with Jed, and who am I to say no? I don't necessarily agree with that is what happened, but it looked that way. Spence was used sparingly, but when he was used, he always played well and rescued stuff for Ange in that first season, at least, anyway, or whatever, the start of the second season. So yeah, I feel like we see this stuff all the time. Like managers have to bring players in due to necessity. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But we can only hope that Frank is willing to use all the limited resources that he is afforded to try and get the best out of it if he's going to be the man that takes us forward.
Didn't look like Spence was too happy, though, with Ange towards the end of the season with how he was then put back on the bench for Destiny Udogie, who'd only just come back from injury. But, of course, that's old business and old news. And we're going to move on to this bit of news, Dave, around Anton Kinski's move to West Ham. Looks like it's getting close. A loan option to buy, and with a possibility of us going after their backup goalkeeper, Mads Hermansen, going the other way to Spurs. We will, I guess, still need a number 2 to replace Kinski theoretically. But why would Spurs be helping a direct relegation rival, considering that Kinski probably is going there to challenge Areola for the number 1 spot?
Yeah, because you've got idiots making stupid decisions. There's no foresight on things, on decisions that they make. For instance, they brought in Thomas Frank. These guys are supposed to make decisions, educated decisions around the knowledge they have around football to be able to see a certain outcome. A little fat Irish guy, a little Teletubby like me can sit here and predict the Frank outcome from the day one. How can they not? Which is a huge concern. And it also goes on then to the Kinski. They don't see themselves as helping West Ham at all. And that's the problem. Mm-hmm. That is the big problem there. We shouldn't be sending any players there to try and help them get out of this situation. Or don't get me wrong. There is huge concerns around Kinski at Tottenham. When he had his run in the side, his shot stopping was called into question. And how many times have we seen players leave Tottenham and go on to the next club and perform well or kick on, And just based on that being a possibility, there's no way we should be allowing it to happen whatsoever. It's absolutely insanity. It's insanity. And if we end up going down, it'll be one of the decisions, and especially if he goes in and makes a massive impact in West Ham in goals, it's going to be one that we are going to be laughed at forever. The reason why is because you've got clueless people in Vinay and Johan Lang that don't have the foresight for these things. They're clueless.
Why are we doing any deals with West Ham, Sam? Like when we're in direct relegation battle with them? Like, why would we be helping them?
Because we have no football people behind the manager other than Vinay, who has been described as a number 2. So we've got no one that can make informed footballing decisions other than a number 2 in Vinay and a number 2 in Langer. So we've just got a lot of people who are waiting for instruction, and they're kind of just like, well, the instruction's not coming, so unless we're going to go and ask Levy for instruction, we'll just kind of see how it goes. And that the rumors about that were so out of left field as well. Like, oh, suddenly it's like Spurs and West Ham are considering swapping backup goalkeepers. It's like, why? What does that do for us at all? Like, they brought in Hermansen for like 25 million as to be their number one, you can assume. And he's been replaced by the guy who's been there and not been fancied for like 4 years.
And that's because actually Hermansen had such a terrible first run of games under Nuno that they pretty much just put him on the bench immediately after. He was that terrible in the first few games. So
yeah,
it'd be crazy if he somehow then was good for Spurs.
Everyone always says, like, you Spurs fans and people, if you sign championship quality players, you end up in the championship. We're seeing a goalkeeper who got relegated last season and was not good enough to be West Ham, who are in a relegation fight. I know that we're not far off. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying West Ham are in a relegation fight, and we are considering taking a keeper they don't deem good enough.
Yeah.
Make that make sense.
It's unbelievable. And also, my only hope is that maybe Kinski's that bad that them sending Kinski to West Ham, they think might help us relegate West Ham instead. But of course, that's just me being humorous and be a happy clapper. But it deal just doesn't make any sense at all. Another thing to probably bring up, Sam and Dave, is just the fact that we only signed Kinski last January window. And if we're going to then be giving him to West Ham in our relegation battle, what the hell was the point of that signing in the first place? It almost screams of terrible incompetency from the squad planning department by Johan Lange in particular, because they decided to keep Fraser Forster beyond his capabilities. He was done for a long time, but they just kept pushing him on and on and on. And then they brought Kinski in because it was a bit of a panic where they knew that Forster just wasn't good enough. So then they were just scrambling to find a goalkeeper to replace Fraser Forster. But at the same time, they were blocking the pathways of young, talented goalkeepers like Josh Keeley and Luka Gunter. And then Josh Keeley got fed up by that fact that we did sign Kinski. And then he's left and moved on to Leyton Orient. So, I mean, Dave, it's just terrible squad planning, this whole Kinski deal. And from the get-go, it felt like a panic signing, to be honest. It did not seem like something that was, let's be honest, carefully crafted or planned out.
But this isn't something we've seen just happen in the goalkeeper department either. We brought through, the likes of Graham Bergvall, which blocked up the likes of Tyrese Hall's momentum and the headway he was making. Donnelly, we brought again, sort of moved him to the periphery, made him play at left back while we played Bergvall in midfield in pre-season and stuff like that. And this is why notoriously a lot of our under 21 players, and a lot of players in the academy are leaving, and they're leaving for absolutely nothing, and a lot of them have, like in past years, have refused to sign on deals because there is no pathway for them into the first team. And when they're looking at a first team struggling and they're still not getting opportunities, even more so, they want to get out of here. And then you look at the likes of Madueke, left Tottenham, went to PSV. Look how much he's kicked on and the money he's gone for. We could do with a player like Madueke in the first team right now, but also some of the fees he's gone for, we could have done with as well. And these are the things that Tottenham are continuously missing out on. I made an argument to bring through some of that under 21 side when they won at under 17, under 18, and under 21 level. So we wouldn't be in this situation right now. Or if we were to find ourselves in this situation, at least you've got guys in the dressing room you can rely on that love this club and will do everything they can to get out of it. Now we're sitting here in a situation going, well, none of us trust these players or these squad or any individuals to really show up for the stomach. And this is the problem with what Tottenham are doing with the poor squad planning. Like, if this was in other years when we didn't have that current group coming through, you would understand it. But when you had a lot of that current crop coming through, Spurs should never have blocked up the pathway. That money, the 40 million on Grace, should have been invested into a senior player coming in and letting them young players develop behind them. But all they've done now is we're still stuck, because the argument from Spurs fans was, but they're too young, you don't want to be stuck with them. We're still stuck with the likes of Bergvall, Gray, players like that playing now, and stuff like that. So it's just piss poor squad planning in general, and it's the same with the goalkeeper. I guarantee you, Josh Keeley goes on to have a better career than Kinski.
Yeah, I just think
shocking.
It's just
Even Hunter was being performing, and his pathway has been blocked up.
It just screams of another reactive signing by Spurs. And also, we've just been signing so many young players that it just doesn't make sense. We're just blocking the pathways of already the ones that were there that plenty of Spurs fans already rated at the club. Like, don't get me wrong. I even think like the signings of guys like Kota Takai doesn't even make much sense when we already had so many young center backs coming through anyways, like Dorrington, like Vuskovic, like Ashley Phillips. Like, why are we then signing,
Yeah,
another one on top of
there
that?
you
It's
are.
like, I just don't get it. It's like we're trying to do this Chelsea model of potentially bringing them in, loaning them out a million times, and then seeing which one ends up really profiting and doing really well. And then you just sell them back for whatever money that maybe you originally purchased them for. But it just doesn't seem to encourage any player that's coming through the academy or any player that's been bought at a young age that's come into the club that they are trusted by the club to, be able to develop and eventually make their way into the first team. It just is from the outside looking in and probably even from the players inside the club, just screams of terrible squad planning and also just no real trust shown to the players that they already have, at the club to be
And
honest.
what's the most disappointing about it is some of our greatest ever players have come from the academy. Ledley King, Harry Kane,
Mhm.
dare I say it, Sol Campbell came through the academy, ended up leaving for Arsenal. Some of Spurs' best ever players have come through the academy.
Yeah. I mean, it's not about Kota Takai, but even now that we have Junai Byfield, coming through the academy, what sort of message does it send to him when he's had all these other center backs that have been signed that, he then has to try to compete with over the summer and when he gets his opportunities? It's just, yeah, terrible squad planning.
I think it goes even further than just the
Uh-oh.
youth at Spurs. Because I look at it like if you look at some of the signings we've made in the last few years where we've signed up and coming talents, Matisse Tell kind of hardly had a look in since he came in. Odebear, obviously he was injured. He had a bit of game time under Ange, little bit of game time here and there under Odebear, under Frank. They're probably the only two that you could really say that in an attacking sense. Obviously, Gray's come in. He's basically had to play out of position all the time. Got very limited minutes in his preferred position until recently. Valise, you bring in, he plays 2 games for the club or whatever, and then we sell him the season later. Kota Takai, he comes in, he plays no minutes. He's going to go on loan. He's going to go on multiple loans. And then all of a sudden, it's going to be the footnote at the bottom of like the Spurs annual statement or whatever. Also, good luck to Kota Takai. He never played any games for us, but good luck. Even Brian Hill. My point is, we take players with good potential and we don't do anything with them. We sit them on the bench. I feel like players will look at it and think, I'm genuinely, even though there may not be other big teams in for me at the moment, I'm better off staying at like fucking Dynamo Zagreb or something for another season because I'm going to play every game rather than praying that I might get 5 minutes at the end of like every 3 games. And on top of that, obviously, all of our players end up just getting injured. So for me, if I was a young player, I used to think this about like players who would want to go to United or to Chelsea, like in the last few years, where it's like you see that you go there and your careers like don't really work out, but you still want to go there. The difference between them and us is they have the trophy legacy. Players are going to go to Man City because even if they don't think they're going to get over the likes of, at the time, like Kevin De Bruyne, for example, or Foden, they still want to go there because they know they're going to get minutes and they're going to get a trophy. But they come to Spurs, and even with how shit we are, young players still don't really seem to get any minutes, and we don't win trophies. So it's just not, for me, it doesn't seem like a great atmosphere for young players in general. And obviously, as you said, you then tie that into these other players from our own club who are looking at it like they've just signed these players for 40 million, yet they can't even get consistent minutes. Like, how the fuck am I going to do that?
Yeah. 100%.
And just Jack, you made the point about centre backs as well, but you also look at the forwards. Dane Scarlett, Will Lancashire, now Mason Melly has been added. Do you know what I mean? There's no, we're just stockpiling with no no pathway of bringing these guys through or anything else like that. And you're just getting yourself into an even bigger mess. It took us years to try and get out of the financial mess, not the financial mess, but the squad mess that Steve Hitchin put us in with poor squad plan and overbloated squad. How many players were we having to farm out on loan every single year until they ran their contracts down? We're getting ourselves back into the exact same mess.
100%. I mean, we've signed so many of these young players that we don't feel like Sam said, that we'll really ever see again. That plenty of times it's like a bit of guess who. You don't even remember that these guys are actually Spurs players, to be perfectly honest. Like the Alejo, Felices of the world, Mason Melia, very good examples there, for sure. We have a bigger question here, Sam. As of January 27th, Spurs' net spend sits around £3 million, despite talk of a £150 million war chest and public statements in the recent, match day program promising January reinforcements. With the relegation battle looming, could this be the most important January window we've had in years?
Yes. The thing is, at the start of the season, when Levy went, you guys asked me what I thought about it. And I said to you at the time, they've rebranded themselves as the Lewis family, but they've been there the whole time, and they could have stepped in at any point. They've chosen to step in when the club's at its highest point. They've taken out the pantomime villain. They've delivered a trophy. They are the heroes of the fans. And they were the heroes of a lot of fans because they got rid of Daniel Levy. And then, they come in, they promised us a bunch of new toys. And eventually, after a few embarrassments, we ended up bringing in Xavi. And now, obviously, we're getting to January. We've brought in Conor Gallagher. We failed to bring in Robertson, although maybe that's still there or thereabouts. We don't know yet. Again, personally with Robertson, I don't feel like it's a signing that we need, but I'm not unhappy if they do it. But I don't understand why you'd bring in two left backs in the same window when you've got deficiencies all over the squad and we're in another injury crisis, and you want to bring in a youth player who's probably not going to play any minutes this season, and an older player who is not finished but is declining. And doesn't play consistently for his parent club anyway. So I don't know. I'm concerned again still that the board, the owners aren't going to put the money in, and so it goes back again to the summer as well. Because we were promised we win the Europa League. We're promised we're going to kick on. I think every Spurs fan had the same fears that I had, that us losing the Europa League was going to knock us back to a point of disrepair. Whereas if United lost, they'd probably still be fine. Then you fast forward a couple months and United signed two of my and probably a lot of people's top targets in Cunha and Mbeumo, and they're sitting fourth and we're sitting 14th, wondering why we haven't signed more than one first team player 27 days into January.
I mean, just as a follow-up there, Sam, is this just Spurs trying to strengthen but failing to do so, or are they just hesitating and just sleeping at the wheel here in the January window, do you think? Oh, maybe he is frozen this time. Dave, I'll throw that one at you then. I mean, do you think they are actually trying to strengthen? It's just they're failing to do it, or are they hesitating and just not being decisive?
No, I think there's no doubt they're actively out there trying. But Johan Lang just doesn't have a good track record of being able to bring in the desired sort of caliber of players that we need to be able to help improve the situation. He can't get into the room to be able to negotiate some of the big deals that maybe Paratici was. And when you look at Paratici, you would assume, and I think I heard Paul O'Keefe say this on Last Word on Spurs, that Spurs are keeping him away from a lot of things because he's moving at the end of January, which, is another concern. So they're not even letting him really sort of put his hands on this transfer window. And he's the guy that has brought in some of our better players like your Romero and your Van de Vens and people like that. Then you look at the managerial situation. Even if they sign this January, they don't know whether Thomas Frank is going to be here much beyond that and stuff like that. When you look at, how toxic it can get very quickly when you sign for Tottenham if you don't start hitting the ground running, and the pressure that's put on you. That's another thing that will deter you away from signing. You know what I mean? So, like, to be honest with you, the reason why we got Conor Gallagher is because the guy wanted out of Atletico so bad. And when you're looking at Aston Villa going for a league title, minutes probably weren't there for him. So we ended up getting him by default because it's clear that he's trying to make the England squad and get as many minutes as he can into his belt and try and make a name for himself for the England squad ahead of the World Cup. That's why we got him. And the only other player we've got is a guy that has his first, season in Brazil. And we've signed him off the back of it,
Yeah.
And then the other one that we were potentially looking at getting was Anthony Robertson, who, again, wants to get out and get regular minutes under his belt so he can be at the optimum level for the World Cup. That's the only stick that we really have going in our favor this window, is we can offer you minutes because of our injury crisis ahead of the World Cup. But there's only very few of them players, that we really want to make that move to Tottenham Hotspur. So I have no doubt that we're out there trying, but we're just struggling to get players in the door.
Where's
if you're
the
a player, take your Spurs mind out. If you're a player, what are the positives of you coming to Tottenham right now?
I think there's tons of reasons you wouldn't come to Spurs right now because you just don't know what the manager situation is with Thomas Frank. It could be an interim that comes in. Who's to say that the interim is going to play the new signing straight away? They might just go with some of the players that they feel like have been at Spurs for a while, maybe understand the club a bit more, and they're going to be gone anyways. So it's kind of just about getting results, not as much about integrating new signings into the team. That's not necessarily their job. And then also just with the way that Spurs have been playing recently and just the fact that they're probably signing up for a team that's in a relegation dogfight, it's not very attractive to players that want to be at the top level, to be perfectly honest. Skodo here, Sam saying, where is that 150 million? And how damaging would it be for this board, Vinay Venkatesham, the Lewis family, Sam, if let's say the January window ended tonight? How damaging would that be for them with their relationship with the fan base? Because they're trying to repair that relationship that Levy, of course, broke. They're not doing a very good job of it.
To be honest, I mean, I don't want to be all doom and gloom, but ultimately, I think it makes very little difference. We've heard every single season that we've got 150 million war chest. I mean, how many times have we heard that figure or around that figure every year? We end up signing like 20 million worth of players, and then that's it. And then every year it's the same thing. Where's that 150 million gone? We only spent 30 million. We only spent 40 million. We only spent this. Like, where's the rest of it? And then it just kind of gets lost in the bookkeeping of the club. And every season it's like, where was that 150 from 2 seasons ago? I swear, we've only spent 3 million net total this window. Like, where's the rest of the money? It's like, come on. I'm saying, come on to the club. Like, pull your finger out and actually do something. But unfortunately, as we've seen over Levy's leadership as well, unfortunately, they're going to do what they want to do. Ultimately, they don't really care if they're hated because they don't even really seem to be football people. So what? They're making their money, and that's it. And if they want to sell the club for 3.5 billion, they're not going to sell it for a packet of mini cheddars because the fans want it gone. They're going to be holding out for what they want. So as much as obviously I'm not defending them and saying that like I'd accept them not spending the money, obviously I wouldn't accept that, and that's why there's the protests that are going on. But ultimately, the fans have no power unless you're gonna start becoming violent, which we know we don't condone any violence on this channel. But that I feel like they just don't care unless they're losing money. You can stand out the front and hold your banners. They're going to make money from the drinks and the concessions and everything anyway. So the 10 minutes that you're outside not buying a drink to them is unfortunately like irrelevant. But obviously for us, we appreciate the people that are standing out there and fighting for the club.
I mean, they are losing money, to be perfectly honest, right? How many games have not gone sold out, or how many games, are there only like 5,000, 7,000 tickets available to be purchased, like the day of? I think Jack, of course, with the Irish crew that we speak to on Thursdays, mentioned that there's still a decent portion of tickets still available to purchase for the North London Derby. And he was saying, like, normally like those get pretty much just sold out from like the beginning of the season. Practically, there wouldn't be tickets available at this stage. So they clearly are losing money by the looks of things this season. And even in the Champions League, most of the Champions League games haven't even been sold out. DB, I just want to say hello to you, DB. Good to have you with us. He's saying, makes me think that they're just devaluing Levy's shares. Their need to win is such the ass that they prepared for us to go down. He's saying win against Levy, not against football. Well, someone that can talk about the board with us. We do have Billy T. He's rushed over as best he could. Good to have you with us, Billy.
Hello, guys. Sorry I'm late. I had a worse journey than Muani and Odebear to get here.
Oh my gosh. Tin Man 007 has come in. Billy saying, big up, boys. The club need to decide to stick with Frank, or the club deciding to stick with Frank is one thing, but not to back him is just pure neglect. I just can't believe what is happening with our club. It's a total disgrace. Just sell up, please. We were talking about, Billy, how we're on January 27th, and the net spend this window has been £3 million by the looks of things. I mean, they said there would be £150 million available to spend from.
Yeah, just crazy. And, I think the fact that we're in a crisis, and as I was driving back today, the news came out that I'm sure you guys have already mentioned many times, but Porro and Van der Ven, another 2 players down, with so thin on numbers, but the board are not reacting to anything. It's like we're just sort of coasting along, and I think they in their heads they think maybe too big to go down or whatever, but I think a different reality is going to be facing us unless we do something. So it's just unbelievable negligence. Neglect is definitely the word there, Tin Man. So I'm speechless, to be honest, about how little that we've done in January. And Gallagher is a good replacement for Benson Kerr. Other than that, our squad is a lot weaker than it was in January now because of all the injuries.
It's almost like they're closing their eyes if they were on like a scary roller coaster or something like that. The roller coaster being Spurs, of course, and they're just closing their eyes, hoping they just get to the end, without.
I don't know if anyone has ever seen the show Succession, but one of the Roy family, they launch a rocket and it goes massively wrong, and ends up all the astronauts dying, and the guy in charge of it just closes his laptop. That's what it feels like we're doing. We're just closing our laptop and pretending it didn't happen at the moment.
What's very funny is then what was it, Roman then cleans his hands afterwards. He washes his hands afterwards, which is hilarious. If anything, I do think the Lewis family do remind me of Succession, and that they talk a big game, they give out all these buzzwords, PR for themselves, and then when it actually comes to making difficult decisions and scary decisions, they just shy away, and it's just all talk with nothing actually getting done, which was the case with the Succession show. Maybe this Lewis family, maybe Lewis or Levy might be Logan Roy. Who would have thought?
So does that mean that Johan Langer is Greg?
Greg was actually quite good, though, to be fair.
Hey, he came out well, I don't want to ruin anything.
Can I just say to Tin Man as well, they're not sticking with Frank because they believe in the guy. According to Paul O'Keefe the other night. Yeah, let's get on to that. They're sticking with Thomas Frank because they're afraid to make a change, and bring in an intern. So it's not like they even believe in the guy, which is even more concerning and even more of a disgrace, Tin Man. The fact that no one knows what direction to go in, and it's clear they don't believe in the guy, so they're just leaving him there until they figure out what they want to do. It's absolutely embarrassing, shambolic, and we should be deeply concerned, Tim, man. It's even worse than what you're suggesting here. It's not like they're sticking by him because they believe if they keep backing him, this is going to be the outcome. They just don't know what to do. It's so scary.
Yeah, Tim, man. Just the other night, Paul O'Keefe was speaking the last word on Spurs, and he said from various conversations with people around the club, the general mood at Spurs is that they're very scared to go down this interim manager route. To you, Sam, I mean, what does that say about the club's leadership and decision-making? I mean, they're scared of making difficult decisions, it sounds like.
Well, I mean, kind of goes against what I was just saying before, but like they just have been burnt by so many like poor decisions and indecision that they don't even know which direction to go, and they fear the backlash. But I don't know, like it's just I don't understand how you can keep a guy around if you don't back him. Like it just doesn't make any sense. But then my fear would be that okay, they bring someone else in. But if it is an interim, then they don't really back him either. So what do they do in the window? They probably still end up signing no one. That's the concern. I feel like regardless of, unless they bring in a permanent, like elite level manager, who demands specific things before he comes in, then I don't see how they're gonna, how bringing any interim manager is going to result in any backing or any players changing. Because as I said, unless we're going to go, a full Hail Mary for the last 4 days of the window, 4 nights, we should say, then what? Like, as we've signed 2 players, one young left back who people out in Brazil say is a good player but isn't ready for the Premier League yet. And we've signed Conor Gallagher, who is kind of a similar profile to Sarr, which isn't necessarily what we needed. Although I'm moderately happy with the Gallagher signing, if you're asking me my opinion. But there's just neglect again and again and again, and it's so demoralizing, man. Like, just the state of, like, we made a joke in the group chat the other day that, like, we were having a political argument in a Spurs group chat. That's how bad it's gotten. No one even wants to talk about football. You want to talk about political stuff that divides you anyway. You prefer to, like, get angry at your mates rather
Spurs
than,
is probably harder to solve. I think that maybe that's the reason
it is. Exactly.
Billy, I mean, if you saw that news from Paul O'Keefe just the other day, I mean, it just, I don't know, like, they are in charge, and it seems like they're supposedly, according to his words, scared to make difficult footballing decisions when they are the head of the whole structure itself. I mean, it's baffling.
Yeah, it's really weak leadership, and I think there were. And actually, this happened. I remember tweeting exactly the same thing last season with Ange, at exactly the same time, and it's happening again in front of our very eyes. Like, there are 2 paths that we can go down at this point, and obviously, this point in the league was a similar shit show last season, and you can either decide that, right, Frank is going to be our man for the rest of the season, so let's go out and back him in January, or we need to get rid of him and act quickly and back that person too. Spurs are doing neither of those things. They're not backing Frank sufficiently, and they're not getting rid of him either. So we're just in this middle ground of keeping a manager that's obviously, drowning in the job at the moment, and needs help if we continue going on the way, or getting someone different in, and we're treading water. And I keep saying we're sleepwalking to being in a real bad situation at the moment. And the worrying thing for me is, every time I look on Twitter at the moment, the clubs below us and around us seem to be buying players, and we're just sort of muddling on. So, I know Nottingham Forest have signed a couple of players today again. West Ham have already added a few players this window. And I think we're just, like I said just now, I think that they believe there's no way that we can go down because we're Tottenham. But I think the reality that we're facing could really, present itself in a different way unless we stop and do something about it. But we're deciding to do neither of the things which we need to do. We're just muddling along and hoping that, something changes out of somewhere.
I mean, just a 2-parter here, Billy. I mean, at what point does not acting become actually a bigger risk than actually doing something? And then, in such a cutthroat industry being the Premier League, is the caution approach that Spurs be seeming to do, is that actually showing to be a bigger issue?
I think we're already there. I think that was already happened when we lost to West Ham. I think as soon as we lost to West Ham, that's a season changing sort of glitch that we might not, that things are gone way past the point of being you have to do something. And they stuck with Thomas Frank, fine. I don't agree with that decision, but if they're going to stick with Thomas Frank, then they have to back him in the transfer window. They're not doing that either. So I think we're already past that inflection period at the moment, and it's already too late to do nothing. And if we keep doing this and keep doing this, we're going to end up being overtaken by Leeds, overtaken by Nottingham Forest, and then, heaven forbid, could be even worse than that.
Yeah. Logan THFC sent in another super sticker, a diamond. Thank you very much, Logan. Appreciate you. And if you want to, at any point, do what Logan has done or do what Tin Man has done and support the channel, we really do appreciate you guys. And also, of course, if you want to get your opinions in as well. And then at the end of the show, we do reserve time for the members to ask us some questions. A final question, Dave, on all of this around just sort of the decision, I guess, to not make a decisive action over Thomas Frank's future and the interim idea. Vinay has only been at the club for a little bit over 6 months. Do you think he's already become a very unpopular figure with the Spurs fan base? Because it seems like his time here has been a lot of caution and lack of decisive actions from him.
Well, look, if you take him on face value and the statements that he comes out, and everyone knows a lot of statements that he's come out with since his time here has been drafted up by the Lewis family and everything else, and okay by them. But that he's failed to deliver in terms of actions off the back of them. It's just been muchness of what we've seen before. But he's like the fact that he's afraid to make a decision, because at the end of the day, right, when you look at the Lewis family, it's clear, like, the first thing they done was review Daniel Levy and his dealings, just to make sure they haven't lost any of their inheritance and stuff like that through neglect from him, which shows everybody it was all about protecting their inheritance rather than actually, having the desire to make Tottenham successful. That's why they've came in here. So that's a huge concern, and there's a vacuum of leadership there. They haven't come in and said, to people like Vinay and that they've brought in to try and make these footballing decisions, really a set of principles or guidelines and stuff for them to operate on them the way they want the club to look. They've just come in to protect their inheritance. Then you get on to Vinay, the fact that he, his job basically, Jack, is to come in here and sort of evaluate and make good footballing decisions. Now, according to Paul O'Keefe, it was him and Johan Lang that were heavily behind bringing in Thomas Frank. Now, I said this earlier on in the show, but if a little fat Irish Teletubby like me can sit here and air a lot of concerns about Thomas Frank and the appointment, and a lot of them have come to fruition, then what the fuck are they getting paid to do in the club? Their job is to basically sort of make good, knowledgeable decisions and try and predict the outcome, of whatever decisions they're going to make, whether that's signing a player, whether that's bringing in a manager or a coach and stuff like that, what they're going to add to Tottenham. They've completely failed around that. When you look at Thomas Frank, style of play was never going to work at Tottenham Hotspur, ever. But are we surprised because you got two guys in Johan Lang and Vinay bringing in a guy that don't understand the football club, don't understand the fan base, the history of this football club and stuff like that. So that was never going to work. Then you look at the amount of players that Johan Lang has brought in here. It's a lot of it has been young players with a lot of potential. But yet every manager, but then he brings in Thomas Frank, who didn't have an academy at Brentford and doesn't really work with a lot of youngsters and stuff like that. So that's a huge concern. Then you also look at the fact that we had European football. They brought in a guy that's never had to manage a domestic campaign with European football in his life. So that they couldn't even predict that he was going to struggle, with the hectic fixture schedule and stuff like that. And there's just, between the three of them, between the Lewis family, Vinay, and Johan Lang, there's a lack of accountability. No one wants to pull the trigger on Thomas Frank. One, because they're scared, to go down just in case, the grass isn't greener on the other side. But also, two, because it's an admission of failure. And none of them want the smoke, because when Tommy Titty Frank goes, where's the heat going to go? Straight to Johan Lang, straight to Vinay, straight to the board. And when the fans are putting the heat on them, that's exactly when the media will start going on them and everything else. And then all their failings is going to be highlighted, and it's going to be well documented. It's going to amp fans up even more. And then all of a sudden, the whole Premier League season is just going to be about the massive failure Tottenham Hotspur has become. And at the end of the day, there's just a vacuum of leadership right through the lot of them. And we are just a club just up a creek without a paddle and no way of getting out of it, and no one that actually has the foresight or the bollocks to make a decision. If the Lewis family were serious about this football club moving forward, they would have done what maybe Daniel Levy would have done in years gone by and pulled the trigger on him in October and November, realizing that you had a chance in January and February with fixtures coming up, with a fresh manager, fresh ideas to pull yourself out of it. To Billy's point, they've left it too late now. Even if you bring in an interim now, just with some of the fixtures and the momentum them teams have that we're coming up against, you're already going in there on the back foot. Now, it's not impossible. You look at Michael Carrick at Man United. Look what he's done in his last two games. Man City, Arsenal. That should be enough for the board to look at it and go, well, if we keep going this way, you look at all the stats, the players' performances, everything else, the fact that we're not selling out games, it is going one way. How long are they going to let this go on for? Because none of them want to be held accountable. They are sinking this football club. Thomas Frank calls us a fucking tanker. We're tanking, all right? We're tanking faster than a Titanic. That's what this football club should be called right now. We are going down without a fight. And the problem is, and the real worry is, you have no one up there that actually has a set of bollocks about them and is ready to make a cutthroat decision that a cutthroat industry really relies upon. You need people to make them decisions, and they are all too scared. And they're all here for different reasons. Vinay's here for a payday. Johan Lang is here for a payday. He was fucked out of Aston Villa. And look when he got fucked out. Look at the progression they've made. Look at the signings they're bringing in and stuff like that. And then you've also got the Lewis family who are just here to take their own inheritance rather than actually kick this football club on. So with the three of them, you've got none of them that really actually care about this football club, that really want to progress this football club, and not one of them have any bit of fucking football knowledge between them, which is the most concerning. They don't surround themselves with legends of this football club that understand the football club and stuff like that, that can help make them make real decisions. They just fuck all of them off. They don't even want to know the legends of this football club at this point. It's absolutely embarrassing. And we should be deeply worried the fact that not one of them want to show 1 ounce of leadership between them. This situation right now requires leadership from the very top and accountability to other people that have made wrong decisions. And until that happens, we're going to keep sinking.
Billy, I think we have to let you go, though. Thanks for making the effort to come on and beat all the traffic. If you have time, can you please tell us what's happening this weekend?
I can. So 8:30 tonight, we're going to drop all the official plans, but we are going to be protesting against Man City. Protests will be happening before the game, during the game, and at the end of the game as well. So look into those 8:30 on Change for Spurs. But I think we're at the point now, in the previous protest, we were talking about hoping to try and inspire something out of Enoch, but I think we're going to change tack at the moment. And I think, I think going forward now, we want to get rid of these owners and get these owners out, because I think they've blown a big opportunity to show that they're different. I think they've already shown that they're not. So we're going to start doing things a little bit differently. So please keep an eye on Change for Spurs at 8:30. Just like everyone in the chat, everyone on here, we've had enough. So it's time to come together and hopefully try and get our football club back.
And they've released a statement, by the way, everybody. So please look out for that over on Twitter, on X. And of course, you'll be seeing more and more Billy spreading the message. Billy, thanks for coming on, by the way.
Thank you very much, guys.
Have a good rest of your evening.
You have a good evening, my man.
But yes, everybody do follow over on that. He only had so much time to plug it, and he did make a good effort to come and join the show regardless. So please, everybody do follow him over there.
I do encourage any fans that can make it. Even if you only want to pop in for 5-10 minutes, please pop in and show your support to Billy and the boys leading this protest. If we're not going to get big numbers down now, then we never will. And no one in this club will be held accountable for some of the shit decisions that have been made that has us in this mess. You need to get down and show your frustration.
Well said. Last and final question. By the way, everybody, if you guys can for us, we're about 24 likes away from reaching 100 we have over 2,500 watching us on all platforms, and then well over 200 watching us on YouTube. So please, everybody, do smash the like button for us. And if you are over on X, we would appreciate if you guys came over here and show some support, but appreciate you guys just watching us in general. And as well, thank you to Logan, THFC, and Tin Man for supporting us in extra ways too. Last and final question, Sam, just because we were talking about the interim decision, and it seems like they're too scared to make a decision about the interim. That then means that Thomas Frank might have to be the one to try to navigate us out of this relegation fight. Do you think Thomas Frank is capable of getting us out of this relegation fight?
I think yes, ultimately. Obviously, I'm concerned that we could get sucked into it. But I think ultimately, yes, I think I've seen enough of Frank in previous years to think that if he really has to, if it comes down to it, he'd probably be the kind of ideal relegation manager, because he'll just shut up shop. We'll go, total haramble and we'll just we'll grind out the Burnley style, games to get what we need, and we'll have a back five. We'll have Palhinha, Gray, Basuma. We'll get Wilson Palacios back in. We'll just be sitting all these players in front of it, and they'll be asking if we can play 7 centre backs and the rest all fullbacks.
Do you trust him against his competition is Sean Dyche, who is probably known as like maybe the new Sam Allardyce in terms of getting teams out of relegation fights. And then Nuno Espirito Santo, who only just recently was able to get Forest out of a relegation fight not too long ago. And now he's going to try to do the same with West Ham. Do you think Thomas Frank has the experience to do that compared to these managers?
I think like, I don't know if it's necessarily if he's got the experience they've got, but I think he's got the capabilities to do it. When you're looking at, a team coming up from the Championship and turning themselves into a mainstay in the Premier League over the last like 6-7 years or whatever they've been up in the Premier League for. And I know you can argue that they're potentially doing better without Frank now, but he still helped them get to this point. And I feel like regardless of how the results are going, you don't just forget the fundamentals of management overnight. And I think that he'll be able to, if they decide that they're going to keep him and don't bring the sufficient players in to help him to not even put us in that in the first place, then I feel like he'll have enough just about to keep us up, mainly because we're too big.
I do understand what Sam is saying. Like, if you look at what he's done at Brentford, it's clear that he can probably do enough at the end of the day. But I think the big difference, Jack, that you point out with Nottingham Forest, West Ham, is they've changed managers. They're not sticking with a manager that's brought them down there. They've changed managers to bring in and try and help with the fight. And they've got the squad with them. Thomas Frank, in my opinion, I don't think he does. That goes back to players ignoring him. Players, if you had the squad with him, they wouldn't be embroiled with fans and stuff like that as well at the end of the day and stuff. So for me, I think that's the big difference. This isn't Thomas Frank with the Brentford side that he had, again, with his squad fighting for him, fighting with him, fighting for the same cause. This is a different situation. A lot of these players can just up and leave in the summer, and that's the big difference. And that's why I do think ultimately we might have to make a change at some point to try and get out of this mess. Because sticking with him, I think he's just going to bring you further and further down into it.
I think my worry is, and it's probably my final point, and you guys are welcome to come in on it, but I think my worry is that last season we very much benefited from the fact that the three managers who pretty much went down weren't a Sean Dyche or Nuno that can try to navigate out of it. I think, what was it? With Southampton, it was Russell Martin, who proved to be very incompetent. And then they made a change to whoever that guy was, Igor or something. And, he couldn't do a job. And then they had Stuart McKenna, who was brand new to the Premier League. Like, he'd never been in a situation like that before. And then Leicester City's case, they went to multiple managers. And then who did they have at the end? Van Nistelrooy. Like, he wasn't good enough to try to get them out of it. Whereas now, like, to be honest, like, when I think of managers that are capable of dragging someone out of a relegation fight and being able to survive, Nuno and Sean Dyche would be some of the first names I would come to think of. These guys have made a career off of doing that, to be perfectly honest. And Nuno especially, like, he did an incredible job of keeping Forest up. And then the following season had them, finishing close to 5th in the Premier League. And Sean Dyche has done his very best, by the looks of things, in very Sean Dychean manners to rescue the shit show that Ange Postecoglou got them into. So that's my worry, is like, even just recently, like Forest result of 2-0 away from home to Fulham. I was like, I don't even know if we could do that right now, to be perfectly honest, get a result 2-0 away from home to Fulham. So I do worry that, like, the managers Frank is coming up against have been in this situation before and are almost probably thrive in these situations. Like, these guys have done it. Sean Dyche has only gotten relegated once, and that was with Burnley. And that was like, what was his 20th year? I'm of course exaggerating, at Burnley, where like the time was already up, for him.
Didn't they also sell Wood? Newcastle bought Chris Wood from Burnley basically to relegate them. Was that the season they went down?
That might have been it, yeah. And Nick Pope might have left maybe the season. I'm not sure when Nick Pope left, but I agree with you.
But Jack, to your point, that's why we're being dragged into it this year.
Like, these guys haven't been relegated.
Like last year, we were able to prioritize the Europa League and being off the Premier League because we had enough of a buffer. And like you listed off, the managers didn't really have that experience to drag them clubs out of it and drag us into it. Whereas the clubs that we're in fighting against now, They are just slowly dragging us into it. And Thomas Frank has come up against them. Forest played us off the park. West Ham looked like Real Madrid. You know what I mean? So it's sort of like these guys do have the ability to be able to make a good go of it or a better go of it than what teams did last year. And that's where the concern comes in as well. And I think that's actually a factor that no one's actually factoring into this relegation conversation.
And just furthermore, too, Forest are a determined club to stay up. Like, they've invested a lot. They have a very determined owner. So they will do
Marinakis will sack again if he has to.
Yeah, he'll do everything he can to stay in the Premier League. They do not want to go back down, Forest. If anything, they're almost a little bit too big to go down with how they've been operating, too. And then West Ham, we know they've been relegated in the past, but they are a massive club that also, in a way, would try their very hardest to not get sacked or get relegated, knowing how toxic it's been for them already this season. So comparing to last season, I think we really did benefit from the fact it was Southampton who almost get relegated every time they come up, Ipswich Town, who hadn't been in the Premier League for ages, and then also Leicester City, who, like, again, were a club that, yes, were in the Premier League for a while, but slowly were kind of headed towards relegation themselves anyway. So it just seems like the teams we're competing against are like teams that will do their absolute most to compete and stay up in the league, whereas before we benefited from those three teams just being shit, to be honest, and having no real experience of trying to navigate a relegation fight, to be honest. So best of luck to you, Thomas, if you are the one to stay in charge. Best of luck to you. But Sam, I think we're going to have to let you go because we are going to take our members' questions, and you have a Stairmaster you have a date with.
Yeah,
it probably sounds a little bit mad out of context, but yeah.
Basically, Sam's on a 30-day fitness challenge, everyone. He's on day 27.
Yeah, so wish me luck. One like equals one prayer.
Yeah. Well, Sam, great contribution tonight, my man.
You, sir.
I think that's reflected by the numbers listening. So thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure, boys. It has been a very good one tonight. So look, hopefully tomorrow we get the points that we need and we can just go into this tricky, difficult, horrendous, horrible, disgusting fixture period of February, hopefully with a little bit of confidence just to push on. And maybe, just maybe, one or two more signings, maybe 3, maybe 11. Anyway, I'll leave you all with that.
A whole new 11.
Pleasure. It's been a pleasure. Chat, everyone. Goodbye. Come on, you Spurs.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate you. Let me pull up the members' questions here, everybody. In case you guys didn't know, if you are a member of the channel, we do reserve time at the end of the shows to answer some of your guys' questions, and we see which ones we have for us here. So, again, appreciate all the support that we do get from all of you members. It does help keep this channel going, and I am pulling them up here. So, let's see. Here we are. Just give me ein moment. We have this from Fantasy McShane. Thank you, Fantasy. He's saying, thinking about the Kinski transfer, would it not be ironic if he made this save on the last day of the season at West Ham that sent Spurs down? Cannot see how this loan makes any sense. Yeah, we covered how it doesn't make any sense at all.
No
Fantasy, we're in the same boat as you. Dave, do you think Kinski will come in to replace Areola, or do you think he will be their backup as well?
I'm not sure he's going to come in to replace Areola. I think what they will look at is Kinski's kicking. And maybe could they use, like, Nuno, he likes to go a bit direct, could they use that rather than be able to play through the final through a lot of pitch, which they struggle with? Will they just go more direct, a bit like what David Moyes used to do with them and start picking up results that way? And maybe that's the thinking behind them bringing Kinski in. And then maybe that, but ultimately it will come down to shot stop. And if he can't keep the ball out of the back of the net, then, there's a huge problem.
And then
I think that's the angle West Ham are looking at potentially.
And then these from Artist T saying, it's sad that this even has to be asked, but what would happen if we actually got relegated? The reports that West Ham players would take a 50% wage cut if they got relegated. So how many guys do we lose? I'd say we probably lose Van de Ven. I'd say we probably lose potentially Romero. I think we would have to sell some of our very best players, to be honest, Artist T.
Yeah, it'd be a complete rebuilding phase. A lot of these players, they'll be picked up elsewhere. It'll be a complete rebuilding phase at Tottenham Hotspur.
And we lose our chance as well, Artist T, of potentially getting any sort of top level manager to come through the door as well. Like the Xabi Alonso's, Pochettino's, Nagelsmann's, any of the choices that Spurs fans have put out there to take over from Thomas Frank. No shot we'd be getting them. We would have to go to an inexperienced talented manager, I guess, to go for ideally.
And with the type of club we are, we'd probably end up spending, what was it, 21 years Nottingham Forest spent down there. So, I would, and plus you'll get to watch us a lot less because, well, barely any of our games will be on telly.
If Van de Ven and Poro really are injured, do you think it's time to come to terms and mentally prepare ourselves for, because it will get worse? I think Poro's out for 4 weeks, and then Van de Ven, according to Thomas Frank, again, I'm not going to take it too seriously, but he says he's only going to be out for 1 game. But we know what that means, RST. It means he could be out for 5 years. But yeah, I'm just going to cling on to the hope that Van de Ven is only out for this 1 game. With Poro, I agree with some of the comments I've seen in the chat. Who would have thought that playing a guy pretty much every single game for 3 years straight would end up, causing him to have an injury like this? We're probably lucky it is only a month injury, that it isn't actually much worse than that, to be fair. And this is Jed Spence's opportunity, right, to come in and play right back for an extended period and see what he can do, see what he can offer differently. He also says, for you guys, from now until the end of the season, at what point would you accept that we're going to be relegated? For me, it's if we fail to win every game up until the Forest game. When is the Forest game?
I'll never give up the fight. I'll always believe we can get out of it until the very last, until mathematically not possible. It's just the way I am, Aris.
Yeah, I would say talk to us after February, even though I don't really anticipate us getting many points from February. Let's just say Sam is right and we end up doing the unpredictable and actually picking up points that we wouldn't expect. Probably talk to me after February, I'd say, artistry. But it's a good question, to be fair. I don't want us to get relegated at all because I don't think we'd get straight back up and it would ruin us. But do you think a season in the championship would wake the board and the sections of the fan base up?
Nope. The board.
It wouldn't wake the board up. Surely the fan base, though, would be at its absolute, I know they have sometimes felt like there could be more numbers for the protests. There could be more attention from the fans to actually put pressure on the board. If this team went to the championship, I actually do imagine there would be mass demonstrations and protests.
But the board would also just set up at that point. They won't have the stomach for the fight to get us out of the championship.
Well, I guess that's what the people want, at the end of the day, is for them to sell up. But hopefully it doesn't have to come to it on that. What's for dinner, Dave?
Spicy chicken burger is what I'm going to have. But after this, we got to go and record the predicted lineup, and then I'll enjoy it, RST.
Spicy chicken. Sounds very nice.
It's going to be lovely.
I'm just going to be having some ramen tonight, but appreciate you, Artist T. Thanks for the support, by the way, my man. And we will see you all for predicted lineup, which we'll post tomorrow, and then pre-match build-up and the watch-along for a game that will be an exciting one because it is an opportunity to be into the next rounds of the Champions League while avoiding the playoffs. So do join us for that tomorrow, everybody. I'm looking forward to a huge, huge game.
We're actually good in Europe as well, so it gives me a little bit of buzz, going into the game.
And thank you, everybody, for all the support. Thank you to Logan THFC. Thank you to Tin Man as well for your extra support. Thank you to all the members of this channel. You do help us out a ton by doing so. And we'll see you all tomorrow, everybody. Have a good rest of your evenings. See you tomorrow.
Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.